So far we've seen stories that were phrased in a pretty straightforward way. They had one sentence right at the beginning that told us the percent and the base and the portion. That's not always the way that we encounter stories. Sometimes the information is organized in a different way. For example, let's say we see a story organized like this. Suppose we're told that Implaza Corp made $85 million in profit last year. 22% of that came from sales of grommets. How much did Implaza Corp make from selling grommets? So we have the same two questions we did before. What is the base and what is the portion? And the base is still the answer to the question, percent of what? And we see that the story says percent of that. That's no good. If we just say that is the base, that's no good, right? Because that is our friend the pronoun. It can refer to just about anything, depending on where we write it. In this case, what does this word refer to? Well, a pronoun almost always refers to a noun that comes before it, right? 22% of that thing I just mentioned, right? What did I just mention? Implaza Corp's profit last year. So the that refers back to the profit. The base here is the profit last year because it's called the antecedent. It's what this pronoun refers to. Okay, what is the portion? 22% of the profit is what? Came from sales of grommets. This phrase came from is a little bit of a red herring here. It just means is. In particular, selling grommets is how they got 22% of this profit, right? So the portion, the 22 out of every 100, that's sales of grommets. Thinking about this a little bit harder, it probably means profit from sales of grommets. But we can understand how much did they make to be how much profit did they make, so we're okay. So again, we've identified the base, we've identified the portion. It just required a little bit deeper reading than it did when the sentence was worded a little bit less complexly. Do you see how I marked up this paragraph in reading it? You should feel free to mark up the paragraphs when you're working through a word problem. When you're trying to extract information like this, feel free to mark up the sentences however you want to help you trace back which phrases refer to what. All right, now we're ready to actually answer the question. How much profit did they make last year? $85 million. And because I like small numbers, I'm going to treat 85 as the actual number here and then have the units be millions of dollars. How much did they make from sales of grommets? Well, the story doesn't tell us. In fact, that's what we're trying to find out. So our answer is going to be X million dollars. Now we're ready to set up a percent proportion. Right. From here on, it's easy, right? The percentage is 22. The base is 85. And the portion is what we want to know. This is a proportion. Cross-multiplying is our friend. X times 100 is 85 times 22. Let's do this multiplication. 10, 16, 17. Oh, and then multiplying by the other two is going to be the same. So we'll have X times 100 is 1,870. Divide by 100, right? X is 1,870 divided by 100. Right, this is going to have 2 digits after the decimal point in the answer. 18.70, and we don't really need that trailing 0. So they made $18.7 million from selling grommets. Let me give you one of these to try. Suppose there are 43 applicants for a certain scholarship. What percent of them will receive the scholarship if there are 15 scholarships available? And there's a little note here, round your answer to the nearest 0.1% if you need to. Remember those 2 important questions that we must always ask when we encounter a percent application. Pause the video and try this now. Before we can do anything, we need to decide what is the base and what is the portion. So the first thing we look for to decide the base is that phrase percent of. Right? Percent of them, it says in this case. Them. Who are them? It must be the applicants. The base is the applicants for the scholarship. How about the portion? What group are we trying to describe using this percent? Well, what percent will receive the scholarship? So the portion is those who get scholarships, right? Okay, so we've made sense of this problem. Again, how did we know that the base was the applicants? Well, the applicants were the only thing that this pronoun them could have referred to. So, how many applicants were there? There were 43. And how many will get scholarships? Well, there are 15 scholarships. We'll assume we'll give them all away. 15 will get scholarships. And what is it we're trying to find out? What percent? Oh, we want to know the percentage. Okay, we're ready to set up our percent proportion. We're looking for the percentage, and that's going to be over 100. The portion is 15, and the base is 43. Okay, we're ready to cross multiply. 15 times 100 is 43 times x. This is easy, 1500. So then x must be 1500 divided by 43. We're going to divide 43 into 1500. And this tips me off to the fact that I may need to round my answer to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to write in those 2 zeros now, just in case I need them. Of course, if I don't, I'll stop earlier. Why do I need this digit? Oh yeah, that's going to tell me which way to round. 43 goes into 15, not at all, into 150, I bet about 3 times. Yeah, 4 is going to be too much. Okay, now we subtract. 10 minus 9 is 1, 4 minus 2 is 2. Bring down the 0. Either 4 or 5. I'm going to try 5. 15, 21. No, 5's just a teeny bit too much. All right, let's try 4. 12, 16, 17. It's got to be 4 because it can't be 5. 10 minus 7 is 3. All right, I do need this 0. Let's bring it down. 43 goes into 380. I bet it's a lot. Maybe it's 9. 27, 36, 37, 38. No, it's a little bit less than 9. It must be 8. 24, 32, 34. Borrowing 6, 3, bring down, oh, I meant 8 when I wrote 9. Bring down another 0. Oh, 43 goes into 368 times also. And I don't really care about what happens afterwards because I know everything I need, right? This is between 34.8 and 34.9. I'm going to round it up to 34.9. So the answer to the question, about 34.9% will get scholarships.